Mr. Durant, if you want to approach the table.
We sure will.
All rise. The Honorable Michael D. Carpenter presiding.
Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. Calling a case of the people of the state of Michigan versus John Sider, file 210635FD. Counsel, identify yourselves for the record, please.
Peter Durant, on behalf of John Sider, who is seated to my left, Your Honor.
All right, today's time and date set for preliminary examination. I presume we're not doing the preliminary examination today.
That is correct, Your Honor. There was a plea offered by the people, and that we would like to accept that plea at this time.
What is the plea?
The plea offer is to a added count 2 of operating while intoxicated second offense, and the operating while intoxicated third offense felony will be dismissed.
All right.
Mr. Durant, if I could have you speak up or move the microphone closer.
Absolutely. I can do both, Katrina.
Thank you.
So, may I address your client regarding the offer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Your attorney has negotiated a 1-year maximum penalty misdemeanor in place of the felony that's currently charged for 5-year maximum penalty. Mr. Yelsick, good afternoon.
Thank you. And Mike Yelsick, on behalf of the people.
The offer was stated on the record by Mr. Durant was that was for a operating while intoxicated second offense and dismissed the third offense. Is that in fact the offer?
It is, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sider, your attorney is recommending that you accept that offer. Are you planning on following your attorney's advice?
I am.
Please stand, raise your right hand, and I'll be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, you can be seated. Katrina, can you hear him okay?
If you could speak up, that would be fantastic.
I don't know if you can move the microphone closer to you. It's a red glowing
Just make sure.
object right there. Sir, the offer placed on the record is the only promise I know about. Has anyone promised you anything more than this or threatened you in any way to get you to plead to this charge, this reduced charge, when you really don't want to?
No, Your Honor.
Are you right now under the influence of any medicine, drugs, or alcohol that's confusing you?
No.
If you enter this plea, you'll be waiving some valuable rights. Those rights are a right to a trial. You could have had a trial by jury, or if you, your lawyer, and the prosecutor agreed, I could have listened to this case as a bench trial, but there'll be no trial at all. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Durant, I presume you are retained.
Retained, Your Honor. Correct.
If you enter this plea, Mr. Durant will be your attorney. You will be waiving the right to request a court-appointed attorney or represent yourself. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
You will be waiving the right to remain silent and not have your silence used against you, and the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you'll be waiving the right to confront your accusers, to call witnesses, and testify. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Knowing your rights and waiving them are different. I believe that you do understand your rights. You would have to waive these rights in order for me to take this plea. Do you waive these rights?
I'm sorry, I do.
Okay. How do you plead to an added count 2 of operating while intoxicated second offense? Do you plead guilty, not guilty, or stand mute?
Guilty.
On or about May 13th of this year, were you operating a motor vehicle on West St. Andrews in the city and county of Midland?
I believe it was West State Andrews, yes.
And prior to driving, had you consumed some alcoholic beverages?
I did.
Mr. Durant, may I take judicial notice of the tests of 0.26, 0.25?
Yes, Your Honor.
And sir, have you been convicted at least once before? It looks like October 22nd, 2008 in Tempe, Arizona.
Yes,
And this is for a drinking and driving offense. Is that correct?
it is correct.
And looks like, all right, so let me back up for just a minute. Mr. Durant, this is one of those strange cases to where the third offense happened too far out to make it a second offense, but not too far out to make it a third offense. And so if I take judicial notice of this, let me just ask him about the second. That way we can get to the facts of the third. You were also convicted on January 3rd, 2013 in Scottsdale, Arizona for a drinking and driving offense. Is that correct?
Yes, it took place, I think, September before. Yes.
All right. But nonetheless, you've had 2 drinking and driving convictions.
Yes, Your Honor.
So if I do that, Mr. Yelsik, I've taken enough facts to have him be found guilty of the felony offense, which then by the case, I can apply it and make it a second offense. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Your Honor.
And do you think I've complied with the court rule and had an adequate factual basis?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Durant, same questions for you, sir.
I agree, and I believe that there is a factual basis here.
Do as well. I find that the plea has been made knowingly, understandingly, voluntarily, and accurately. We'll enter in as count 2, which is operating while intoxicated, second offense. Count 1, operating while intoxicated, third offense, will be dismissed. Mr. Durant, did your client just recently move here? But I see a Gilbert, Arizona address.
He's actually been relocated for work, Your Honor. He was a part of the team for the new Costco, and as such with his work, after he works a while at a location with a Costco, he moves to the next location. He's sticking around to make sure that there's no issues with this case.
Mr. Durant, I'm sorry, we're not catching everything you're saying.
So he relocates through work. He's been sticking around in Midland County. However, he does plan on relocating once this case concludes, Your Honor.
All right. So at this point in time, Mr. Sider, you have been working with Miss Rebecca Holm, I suspect, in pretrial services. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I have. Yes.
We're going to do a handoff because she's the felony person and you no longer would be under their jurisdiction. So continue to do what you're doing. At some point in time, someone from my staff will be in touch with you. There'll be a different person that you'll interact with.
Okay.
You're still testing through J&A and you'll still be following up with, we're not changing any of those people, just who would be supervising.
Okay.
So at this point in time, could we get a sentencing date?
Yes, Your Honor, that will be August 16th at 10:45 a.m.
August 16th at 10:45 a.m. That could be by Zoom. So anything else we need to address on the record, Mr. Yelsik?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Durant?
Not at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Sider, someone will be in touch with you. Otherwise, just keep doing what you've been doing. And we'll see you by Zoom, or you can be in person, but I'm allowing you to by Zoom because I presume you need to work.
Thank you, Your
All
Honor.
right, we'll be adjourned.
Your Honor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes,
Just-
I'm ordering a side. Yes, Katrina.
Could he also stop by the front window just to verify his address for probation?
Mailing address? Yes. Would you accompany him? Do you want him to go to the probation department or to the criminal window?
If he could go to the probation window, Ms. Schickett.
Durant, accompany your client to the probation window so we can get the right address without placing it on the record.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
All right, we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get everything you need? It's good to have people back in the courtroom. Mr. Brown, you can go back on over to the table. Thank you very much for allowing us to take that case. After all the charges.
Whatever you get, you'll get it. And, I believe it was their own.
Are we
Your Honor?
ready to proceed? Yes,
I am ready, and if you could also remind them about the red button.
I will. All right, we're on the record. The People's State of Michigan versus Tremaine DeAndre Brown. This is file 21-0847FY. Counsel, identify yourselves for the record.
That's who I do so on behalf of the people.
Daniel Duke appearing on behalf of Tremaine Brown.
All right, today's time and date set for preliminary examination. There's a couple of housekeeping matters we have to address before we get started. Number one is that there's an amended complaint. So Mr. Brown, there's some added charges and some added dates, and I need to read those to you, and I'll do that in just a second. The other thing that I need to make sure that everyone understands, both for you and for the prosecutor, is that the microphone that's right in front of you is glowing red. And when it's glowing red, we can hear anything that you might say. There's a button that's on the top, and if you look at it, your eyes are younger than mine, so you probably see it. When you push it, it turns it green. I don't know why they did it this way. I wouldn't have, but when it's green, it's safe. I guess that's a good way to say that. We can hear you otherwise. So if you have questions of Mr. Duke, I won't be able to hear you, but the microphone's picking you up.
All right.
So make sure if you're gonna say anything to Mr. Duke, if you want it to be private, you're gonna need to push the button. Let's do so the same with you if you wish to confer. I can't hear, but the microphones are really good and they pick it up. And so if you think it's in private, it's not. So I guess red means it's recording and green means that we wouldn't be recording that. So let me go ahead and do the amended complaint first. Mr. Duke, is it all right if I read to your client the charges?
Yeah, sure. I have a copy of that.
Okay, good.
I
And
have
it
it
looks,
right in front of Mr.
it
Brown.
looks to me, Ms. Dusso, I know that Mr. Brooks's name is at the bottom. It looks as if the added counts are after count 10, or are they intermingled?
They're a little bit intermingled, Your Honor.
Okay, so I'll read all 17.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
Mr. Brown, the prosecutor's office, one of the first things to make the change is just to the lower right of your name is a date range. The very first one only had June 15th. The second one adds a date range between June 15th and June 17th. That's because some of the charges they're alleging took place afterwards. I'm presuming it's probably the witness tampering, which is at the very end, but I don't know yet. That's why we have the preliminary examination. So they have charged you with 17 crimes. My job today is to listen to the facts to determine if there's enough evidence for the case to move on or not. I might find that there's not, and the case could totally be dismissed. Or I might find that there's one, and 16 counts should be dismissed. Or I might find all 17. My job today is just to listen to the facts and then make a determination. But I have to read you the charges and maximum penalties because that's required by law. So in count 1, it is alleged that in the city of Midland, in the county of Midland, between June 15th of this year and June 17th, in count 1, that you made an assault upon Katoria Crawford with the intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. That, if you're convicted, typically would be a penalty of up to 10 years in prison or $5,000 in fines plus court costs, DNA to be taken upon arrest. I said that one as an example because I need to go to the last page. So if you could go to the last page, there's the last page, the very last thing right above the signature of Mr. Reddick, who filed this document. There's a habitual offender second notice. Prosecutors alleging that you had at least one prior felony conviction on July the 15th, 2019, of attempting to resist obstruct a police officer in Saginaw County. That would make this at least your second felony, and it has an impact on all of these charges that are felonies. So if you're convicted of count 1 and as habitual offender second, it would multiply that maximum penalty by 1.5. And so that would be up to 15 years in prison instead of 10. In count 2, you're charged with felony firearm charge. Because of the same date, time, and place, they're alleging that you did have or carry in your possession a firearm, which was a handgun. And at the time you committed or attempted to commit the felony of assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. That crime carries with it a penalty of up to 2 years in prison, and it must be done consecutive with and preceding any term of imprisonment imposed for the felony or attempted felony, and mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device. So that's a 2-year upfront before any of the other counts could be served. Count 3, you're charged with assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. There's a different victim. The allegation is in the same date, time, and place that you made an assault or assault battery upon a LMW with intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. The reason why they use initials is that that's a child. And so they typically don't put the child's name in the document. That's why that has initials and other people have their full names. That crime is punishable typically by up to 10 years in prison or $5,000 in fines plus court costs. But for you, if you're convicted of the second offense notification, it could be up to 15 years. Count 4, they charge you with a felony firearm in association with that. Again, they're saying that you did carry or have in your possession a firearm, which was a handgun, at the time you committed or attempted to commit the assault with intent to great bodily harm against LMW. And again, that's a 2-year consecutive and preceding any term of incarceration. Count 5, you're charged with assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder or by strangulation. It is alleged in the same date, time, and place that you made an assault upon a LKW. Again, that's a minor. That's why there's just letters there instead of their name. And it was your intent, they're alleging, to do great bodily harm less than a crime of murder. Again, up to 15 years in prison or $5,000 in fines plus court costs, DNA to be taken upon arrest. Potential consecutive sentencing is also for these types of charges if the assault was done in a place of confinement. Count 6, you're charged with felony firearm. That means that you did carry or have in your possession a firearm or a handgun at the time you committed the offense, which could be up to 2 years consecutively and preceding any term of imprisonment imposed for the felony or attempted felony. Mandatory forfeiture of the weapon. So it says, in essence, there's 3 different people, and after each one, they're charging the felony firearm. Count 7, you're charged with intentionally discharging a firearm at a facility where you knew or had reason to believe was a dwelling or potentially occupied structure. Again, could be up to 15 years of prison and or $10,000 in fines, mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device because of the habitual, if you're convicted as both. And then again, the felony firearm of up to 2 years consecutive or 2 years consecutively preceding any term because you carried in your possession a handgun at the time you committed or attempted to commit the offense. Count 9 is a charge of carrying a weapon with unlawful intent. It is alleged on the same date, time, and location that you did, with intent to use the same unlawfully against the person of another, go armed with a firearm, a handgun, contrary to law. Typically, it's a 5-year offense, $2,500 in fines plus court costs, mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device. View it could be up to 7.5 years with the second offender habitual. Count 10, they charge you with the felony firearm as a result of that you did carry or have in your possession a handgun at the time you committed this offense. Again, it is a 2-year consecutive and preceding any term of imprisonment imposed for the felony or attempted felony or felony conviction. Count 11, they're charging you with the crime of assault with a dangerous weapon. It is alleged that you did make an assault upon Katoria Crawford with a dangerous weapon, which was a handgun, without intending to commit the crime of murder or inflict great bodily harm less than the crime of murder. That offense typically is up to 4 years in prison and or $2,000 in fines plus court costs, DNA to be taken upon arrest. For you, it could be up to 6 years in prison. Count 12, they charge you with felony firearm because when they allege you did attempt or commit the crime of assault with a dangerous weapon, you had in your possession a handgun, which is a felony punishable by up to 2 years consecutively with and preceding any term of imprisonment. Count 13 is assault with a dangerous weapon or handgun because you did make an assault upon LMW, that's a child, with a dangerous weapon, a handgun, without intending to commit the crime of murder or inflict great bodily harm less than crime of murder. That is typically punishable by up to 4 years in prison and or $2,000 in fines plus court costs, DNA to be taken upon arrest. Consecutive sentencing may be imposed if the assault was done in place of confinement. For you, it could be up to 6 years. Then they charge you with a felony firearm because they allege that you did carry or have in your possession a handgun at the time you committed the offense of assault with a dangerous weapon. That is a 2-year felony consecutive with and preceding any term of imprisonment imposed for the felony or attempted felony, mandatory forfeiture of the weapon or device. Count 15, you're charged with making an assault and battery, did make an assault, felonious assault on LKW with a dangerous weapon, a handgun, did not intend to commit the crime of murder or inflict great bodily harm less than the crime of murder, but that is typically a 4-year felony. For you, it could be up to 6 years and or $2,000 fines plus court costs, DNA to be taken upon arrest, consecutive sentencing possible if it was a place of confinement. And then they charge you the felony firearm, meaning you did carry or have in your possession a firearm, handgun at the time that you committed or attempted to commit the assault with a dangerous weapon on LKW. That is a 2-year required consecutive and preceding any term of imprisonment and mandatory forfeiture of the device. Finally, in count 17, they charge you with witness, intimidation, bribing, interfering. They allege during that same dates, range, and locations that you did give, offer to give, or promise to give money to an individual to encourage the individual to avoid legal process, to withhold testimony, or to testify falsely in official proceeding. Typically, that's a 4-year felony and or $5,000 in fines plus court costs. For you, it could be up to 6 years. And for this, it could be consecutive sentencing, may be imposed for any other conviction. So it's a lot of charges, but in essence, the charges kind of follow that there were 3 different people, 1 adult and 2 children, and that there were 3 different types of events. discharge at a building, carrying a weapon with unlawful intent, an assault with a dangerous weapon, and then the felony firearms after that, and then witness tampering. So they're kind of grouped together. That's the reason why you kept hearing the 2 years after. That does not mean that you stack all of them up. There's certain provisions, and Mr. Duke will go over that with you. That doesn't mean that's what you'll get. That just means that those are the maximum penalties. So this time, all I'm asking is if you understood what I had read.
Yeah, I understood.
Okay, I'm glad you did, because there was a lot of reading, so I didn't want to have to go back over that. So this time, is there anything that we need to do prior to starting and taking testimony in this, do so?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Duke?
No, Your Honor.
And I presume that there is a sequestration order, so anyone who's going to be testifying would have to be removed from the court?
Your Honor, I presumed the same, so all of our witnesses, except for Detective Stefaniak, are in the hall.
Okay, Mr. Duke, you understand the same?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Yeah, the sequestration order, so if there's any witnesses that you would
Yeah.
intend to call? All right, that means that, it just means that if there's somebody here who might testify, they couldn't stay and listen to other testimony. So no one's anticipated to testify except for right now, the detective, and then I believe we will have other witnesses, but they're not in the courtroom at this time. All right, and have we pre-marked all of the exhibits?
For the most part, yes, Your Honor.
How many exhibits in general do you think you will have? Just so I can mark my spreadsheet so I can be ready.
I believe I have 10 marked with the potential for maybe up to 12 or 13.
Okay. Go ahead and open up my notes. All right, with that, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. The people will call Katoria Crawford.
Yes, if you want to do that. Ms. Crawford, if you come right on up here, stand right next to this podium. I'm going to have you sworn in, and the microphone that's going to try to pick you up is this one here. But if you would face my clerk, and she'll have you sworn in. Raise your right hand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, watch your step as you go up the ramp there. Have a seat. And the same's true here. The microphone that's going to be picking you up is it's outlined in red. And so if my staff person, who you won't be able to see, Katrina, says, I can't hear you, we'll have to have you speak up or move closer to the microphone. We're going to presume that we can hear you okay.
Okay.
Your witness.
Thank you. Could I have you just state and then spell your first and last name for the record?
Katoria Crawford, Katoria Crawford, CRAWFORD.
Hang on just a second. Let me check to see if Katrina can hear you. Could you hear her okay, Katrina?
Your Honor, she could move closer to the microphone, push her chair closer. That would be great.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Katoria, could you tell us where you live?
Grove Street Commons.
And is that in the city and county of Midland?
Yes.
Would you recognize the picture of your apartment building if I showed it to you? Yeah,
Again, a couple things. One is I can see you shaking your head, but at some point in time, this is probably going to be typed up. And so you have to answer verbally. So you either have to say yes or no. We all use nonverbal communication. That's okay, but just make sure you're using verbal communication as well. And you kind of have a soft voice. We're going to need to have you speak up.
Okay.
There you go.
This is people's proposed exhibit 1.
Gotcha.
And this is 2 photos, just different views. Could you tell us what are in those photos?
My apartment.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of the outside of your apartment?
Yes.
And what the view of that is that do you consider that the front or the back?
I think it's the front, but I think they consider it the back.
All right, is that from you'd be looking from Grove Street if you saw that?
If you, yep. Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 1.
Any voir dire or objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Were you at your apartment on the evening of June 15th, 2021?
Yes.
Just before midnight, something odd happened?
Yes.
What was that?
My house got shot up.
Right. Who was in the apartment when that happened?
Me and my 2 nieces, my niece and my nephew.
Now you say the apartment got shot up. What made you realize that, or what made you think that?
The smell of sulfur.
Right. What was the first thing that that sort of caught your attention?
Well, we thought it was fireworks, but when I smelled the sulfur, I knew it wasn't fireworks.
Okay, so you thought it was fireworks. Were you hearing something then?
Yeah, sound like someone was like shooting the fireworks at my house.
Okay. What happened? Like, what did you guys do when you heard that?
Dropped to the ground.
How long did you stay on the ground?
Until I called 911.
And could you give an estimate? I mean, was it seconds, minutes?
Probably like 3-4 minutes.
At the point where you called 911, had you stopped hearing the loud sounds?
Yes.
I mean, you said initially you thought it was fireworks, but then you smelled sulfur.
Mhm.
Okay, and that made you realize that it was
gun
shots.
Yep.
Okay. Do you recall? Did you hear more than one shot?
No, I only heard like 3 or 4. Yeah, it was like 3 or 4.
So did all 3 of you hit the ground then when you heard that?
Yes.
And I'm gonna show you this People's Proposed Exhibit 2. And again, this is 2 photos just of different views. Could you tell us what these photos are of?
My living room.
And in there we can see several pieces of furniture and a TV. Is that an accurate representation of how that room was set up on the night of June 15th?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 2.
Or do your objection?
No, Your Honor.
Without objection, it is admitted.
Could you sort of explain, and you can use the photos if it helps, where the people were in the room when you started hearing the shots?
My nephew was sitting in a chair. I was sitting literally right here with my feet on the couch, and my niece was standing right here.
Can we mark those somehow?
Okay, yeah, looks like there's a couple of pens over there. Could you mark, maybe put your nephew's initials where he was?
Okay.
Can we get those initials so we know?
Yep, I believe that's
LW.
I think they're both going to be
Yep,
LW.
they're both of them. It's
I think we have to use the middle
LW.
ones. Okay, so your nephew's going to be LKW.
Okay.
And then could you put your niece's initials LMW where she was standing? And then I know it's kind of dark on there, but could you put your initials where you were sitting?
You want me to just put it over up on top of here? So
You know what, yeah, why don't you can draw them up there with an arrow to where you're sitting.
okay.
Right, and you'd indicated you had your feet like out on the couch toward
Yeah.
the other end.
Mm-hmm.
And that, now there was a window behind the couch, is that true?
Mm-hmm. Two
Okay, hang on
windows.
just a second. And
Oh,
are
I'm
also
sorry.
nonverbal, so we need to have you say yes or no, because they're spelled
Yes.
out pretty much the same.
All right, so that window is behind the couch.
Yes.
When the shots were happening, so that night, in this picture we see that the blinds are closed, or the shades are down, the blinds are closed. What did that look like that night?
They were up. They're open. The blinds was open and my shades was open too.
All right, so it looks like there's some kind of almost see-through curtains hanging down.
Mhm.
You're indicating those were open,
Yes.
and then the we'll call them drawstring blinds, I guess, behind them. What position were those in?
Up.
Up, completely up, or
They were in the middle, like when you open blinds, when you turn the thing so you can see out.
okay? So the slats were open.
Yes.
Were you able to see out of the apartment?
You can see in, but it was dark, so you can't see out.
You can look out, you just can't see anything in the dark.
Yes.
Okay, and then if you're outside looking in, you'd be able to see
Everything.
Was the light on?
all
And so you saw all three of you were in that room.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
at the time that this was happening, the lights were on.
Yes.
Did any of the shots come into the living room?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
Just one
And do you know where it came into the living room?
through the door.
I'm going to show you People's Proposed Exhibit 3. Is that a picture of the door that you're referring to?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate representation of how the door looked that night after the shooting?
Yes.
I look for people, admission of People's Exhibit 3.
Any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
It will be omitted.
Thank you. So if you look at that door, then you can see a circle at the bottom. Is that the hole where the bullet came in?
Yes.
That didn't exist prior to that night?
No.
That particular bullet, was there something that concerned you about the path that bullet took?
Yeah, it went into the ground and we thought it went into the couch. But it went into the ground.
Right, and was there anybody nearby where that came in?
My niece, when she dropped to the ground, she crawled towards the door and then crawled out into the kitchen.
So that bullet would have come then in the near vicinity of where she had dropped to the ground.
Yes.
Were there other bullets that came into your apartment?
Yes.
Do you know where?
Yes.
Where was that?
My bedroom. It went through the window.
All right, now I'm going to show you People's Proposed Exhibit 4. Is that a picture of your bedroom?
Yes.
And then obviously you can see in that picture there's some damage to the window. So is that a fair and accurate representation of what that looked like after the shooting?
Yes.
Move for admission of People's Exhibit 4.
Any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 will be omitted.
And so just to be clear, in the bottom of this picture in Exhibit 4, we can see a bed. Would that be your bed?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then in the lower left-hand side of the window, there's some broken parts of the blinds in the window, and that was not like that prior to the shooting.
No.
So that was damage caused by the bullet that came in the window.
Yes.
Was anybody in the bedroom at the time?
No.
Do you recall if the lights were on in the bedroom?
They were.
I'm sorry, were they, did you say they were on?
No, they
They
were.
were not on,
No.
okay.
All right, so you'd indicated that you called police after you heard the shots.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Eventually, they came out and made contact with you.
Yes.
And did you indicate to them who you thought might do something like that?
Yes.
Who did you indicate to them?
Tremaine,
And you're referring to Tremaine Brown?
yes.
How do you know him?
Acquaintance, friend,
Did you have any sort of a dating relationship, or were you seeing each other as
more so
than
like
friends?
friends with benefits,
Okay. Do you see him in the courtroom today?
yes.
Could you tell us what he's wearing?
Orange,
Your Honor, if the record could reflect the identification of the defendant.
Any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
The record reflect that the victim identified the defendant.
How long have you known Tremaine?
roughly 3-4 months.
Has he been to your apartment prior to June 15th?
Yes.
How often would you say?
Prior to the incident, once because we stopped talking. But prior to, like, a few times.
Okay. So you said you guys stopped talking. Can you explain that a little, like what happened?
We fell off because he was still intimate with his baby's mother.
Okay. And when was that you say you fell off, meaning like you guys stopped
We
seeing
stopped
each other?
talking because he wasn't done with his baby's mother.
Okay. When about was that?
A month before the incident.
So you'd indicated he'd been to your apartment a few times. He knew where the different rooms were?
Yes.
When was the last time he had been there prior to the shooting?
The day before.
Right, and so at that time, presumably you guys had been talking again?
Yes.
How long had you been talking at that point?
Probably just that day before, I believe. But I think just that day. I can
And
recall.
do you recall why he was there? The day before would have been June 14th. Is that true?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall why he was there on the 14th?
He was hungry. So I told him I'll cook for him.
And who all was there that night?
Same, me, my niece and nephew.
So he knew that your niece and nephew were staying with you?
Yes.
How did things go that night?
It went okay. We didn't argue or anything. We talked. It was okay.
Had you ever seen Mr. Brown with a gun?
Yes.
When was that?
That night.
The 14th?
Yes.
What could you explain a little bit about what did you see or?
Him playing with it in my kitchen. And I told him I don't like him in my house.
Do you recall what it looked like?
Gray. That's about it.
Was it a handgun or?
It was a handgun. It wasn't a rifle.
Okay. You said you didn't like him in your house. Did you ask him to leave or?
Yes, I told him either leave or take it out of my house, but I don't like guns in my house.
And how did he react to that?
He didn't say anything. I mean, he just left. We didn't argue or anything.
Okay, so at that point he left with the gun.
Yes.
When did you hear from him next?
That night.
All right, and how was that?
We were okay. We were okay.
All right, did he call you, text you, come by again?
He texted me to tell me to well, he called me and asked me because he left his food at the house. So he called me and asked, can I bring the food outside? And I'm like, okay, sure. So when he pulled up, I took the food outside and we talked for a minute and that was it. There wasn't no arguing or anything.
Were there any texts from him to you after that or between you two?
Yeah, it's a few of them. They get it back in blood. I didn't understand that one. Or the part where he said I poisoned him.
Them being the tacos?
Yes.
All right. Would you recognize those texts if I showed them to you?
Yes.
This is People's Proposal Exhibit 5. You take a look. There's 3 pages there. Take a look through those and let me know if those are the texts that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So is that a fair and accurate representation of the text conversation between you and Mr. Brown on the evening of June 14th? And then I believe the last two were from Tuesday, which would have been June 15th.
Yes.
I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 5.
Anybody your objection?
No, yeah.
No objection is admitted.
So in those texts from the night of the 14th, it sounds like at some point he asked when he could see you again.
Yeah.
And what was your response?
I'm good. We could just be friends.
Right. So did you want to see him anymore at that point?
No.
Did he sort of persist and ask any more about seeing you or being with you?
No.
What was the rest of that conversation like?
Can't really remember. Besides him coming,
You can take a look at the text.
I was like, I can't remember. Oh, he wanted to come see me, and I told him no. Then he said, I said, we good. He said, what? I said, I'm good on seeing you again. And he said, why? I said, I'm not about to keep letting you hurt me. And he said, I'm not. We can be friends. I said, I'm good on that. Good night. And he said, good night.
Okay. And when you're saying I'm good on that, you're indicating to him that you don't really want that.
No.
So then those last two texts where he talks about you poisoning the tacos, that was from Tuesday. It looks like. Could you tell the timestamp on there?
12:44 Tuesday p.m.
All right, and that would have been June 15th.
Yes.
And what did he say about the tacos?
He said, what the F you do to them tacos? You poison me.
And did you respond?
Shut the F up, fool.
All right. Did you have any idea what he was talking about?
No, because I mean, we all ate the tacos, so.
All right. Did you hear from him any more prior to the shooting?
No. He called me while I was at work, but I couldn't answer. So when I got off work, I called him at 11:11 that night, and he didn't answer. So, nope.
Okay. Did you hear from him after the shooting?
Yes.
When was that?
While the police was there.
Okay, while they were initially there, would have been the early morning of June 16th?
Nope, the same night, the 15th, I called him again.
Okay, do you know what time? So do you have any idea what time the shooting was around?
Yeah, like around 12 at night.
Okay, so then it would have gone into the early morning of the 16th?
Yes.
And is that when the officers were there?
Yes.
All right, so you said you heard from him. How was that?
I cussed him out. He told me that he was sleeping in his bed, that he didn't know nothing about it.
Did he call you or did you call him?
Nope, I called him.
And when he said he was sleeping in his bed, do you know where he lives?
Not I know the house. I don't know the address. I know the house.
Is that in Midland or somewhere else?
Yes, it's on. It started with an F, but can't pronounce the name of it.
But he indicated to you that's where he was that night?
Yes.
All right, so after you talked with him on that night, did you hear from him again?
That night, yeah.
You heard from him a second time after
That
you
night,
called him?
yes.
How did that happen?
They had transported us out of the house to a safe haven, basically, and he called to check up on me.
Did you talk with him?
Yes.
Did he have anything to say about what happened?
Basically that I could have came there to his house to, if when my house got shot up, that I can come to his house with my niece and nephew, but that I didn't feel safe because I kind of figured it was him.
Right. When was the next time you heard from him after that?
On the phone.
Did he call you again?
No, he called me from jail.
Okay. Do you recall what day was that? The same day, the 16th, or a different day?
No, I don't recall the date, but I know he was in jail.
Okay, so he called you from jail. What did he say when he called you from jail?
That he didn't do it. That he'll pay whatever.
When you say he'll pay whatever, what was he going to pay for?
For me to say that he didn't do it, I guess. I'm not sure.
Was he talking to you about coming to court?
Yes.
What did he tell you about that?
Don't come to court.
How many times did he call you from jail?
4 or 5 before they blocked his calls.
How many times did you actually speak with them?
2 or 3.
All right, so you didn't answer every call?
Nope.
In the conversations you had, were they all similar to what you described?
Yes.
Have you gotten any other messages regarding you coming to court since this happened?
Yes.
Can you describe what those messages have been?
Can I not come to court? Can I please not come to court?
How have you been receiving those?
Text messages.
Do you know who they're coming from?
No.
Are they numbers that you've ever seen before?
No.
Have you tried to figure out who they're from?
Somewhat, yes. I'll call the number back, and it'll be a text now number. I didn't try to call the second number back. No.
So, what is it when you say a text now number? What is that?
Like a text app.
What does that app do?
Just like an alternate number.
All right, so it makes a number.
A fake number, basically.
So a number that's different from the person who's actually trying to contact you.
Yes.
So when you tried to contact the number from one of those messages, it went back to the Text Now app.
Yep. Yes.
I have nothing further at this point, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Duke, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Crawford, I believe it was in People's Exhibit number 2. It showed what I would describe as probably your living room or your family room.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you usually call that room?
Living room.
That's your living room?
Yes.
Okay. And then I know you initialed who was sitting where, but my recollection was there's like a white folding chair.
Yes.
Okay, that's just like a temporary chair that you brought out because you had an extra person in the house?
Yes.
And was that the seat or the chair that your nephew was in?
Yes.
Okay, and you were on the couch, is that also true?
Yes.
Was your niece on the couch with you, next
No.
to you?
No.
She was in a different chair?
No, she was standing up behind the armrest.
Okay, so she was standing up.
Mm-hmm.
Your nephew
Yes.
was sitting in the white chair,
Yes.
and you were on the couch.
Yes.
Okay, and this was about what time?
Around 11:30.
Okay, that was 11:30 p.m.
Yes.
Right before midnight.
Yes.
Okay, what were you guys doing?
She was doing my hair. My nephew was playing a video game.
Okay, was it unusual for them to stay up that late? It seems kind of late to me, but
I just got off work, so yeah, they stay up around that. Yeah, they stay up late.
okay. And I assume that were there some lights on in your living room?
Yes, the lamp.
Okay. And you described that the blinds in the window were the blinds were down, but the slats were open so you could see out the window. Is
Yes.
that true?
You can't see out from inside the living room, but you can see in.
Okay. And you also testified that in your bedroom, the light was off.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point, you said you were at work that night?
Yes.
Okay. And about approximately how long had you been home before the 11:30?
I probably not long. I walked in the house at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
From catching Dollar Ride. I called him at 11:11, so I wasn't at home. I was still in my uniform, so I was not at home very long.
Okay. And when you said you called him, you were referring to Tremaine Brown?
Yes.
Okay. And could you just generally just describe that conversation again for me?
He didn't answer when I called him at 11:11.
Okay. Did you leave him a message?
No.
Okay. And did he call you back?
No.
So you had no conversation or no contact with Mr. Brown that evening? Is that?
No.
I mean, that you know of?
No, not that I can recall.
Okay. So you called him, didn't leave a message, and he didn't call you back?
No.
Okay. So in approximately 11:30, you thought you heard, you described as fireworks, but you believe now were gunshots?
Yes.
Okay. So immediately after you heard, or the three of you first heard the gunshots, you hit the floor. Is that you described it?
Well, they knew before I had to roll off the couch. The kids knew before I knew. So they dropped to the ground before I dropped to the ground.
Okay.
And when I smelt it, I immediately called 911.
Okay. Can you describe what you smelled?
Sulfur.
Sulfur?
Yes. Like gunshots.
Okay. Burnt gunpowder?
Yes.
Okay. And was there any reason or any opportunity for you to look outside immediately before you heard the gunshots?
I didn't look outside at all. When I got off the phone with the police, I went out the back door and knocked on the neighbor's door. And they told me that it was, everyone was in the front yard. So I said, okay, I'll meet you through the front door, when I knew it was a lot of people out there. So I felt safe to go out the door.
Okay. So would it be your testimony that you did not see Mr. Brown or anyone else fire the shots?
No.
That's fair?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see a vehicle or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay. Now, when you described your relationship, you've known Mr. Brown for like 3 to 4 months. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And you described it as friends with benefits?
Yes.
Which means that you have have had a sexual relationship with Mr. Brown.
Yes.
And it troubled you that he continued to have a relationship with his, you described baby mama.
I didn't have a problem with him being with his baby mama. I had a problem with the lies and him saying that he was done with her.
Okay. So your testimony is if he had been truthful with you about what was going on, you were okay with it?
Yes.
So you felt like he was going behind your back, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what upset you?
Yes.
And that had been going on for some period of time, and then you broke it off with Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And then a few days or a day before the incident, you again had contact with Mr. Brown. Is that true?
Before, no. Me and him had stopped talking a month prior to him coming over because he was hungry. We had stopped talking because he wasn't done with his baby mother. Then that night we talked. The night before the incident happened, we talked.
Okay. And that's when he came, I believe you said he came over and had a handgun?
Yes.
Okay. Did he do anything with that handgun to make you feel threatened or like uncomfortable?
Not threatened, more so he was just playing with it in the kitchen. I don't like guns around me, period.
And that's not a good idea anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
And then plus with my niece and nephew in the house, it was just a no.
Okay. But I asked, did he do anything threatening with it or anything to make you feel uncomfortable?
Nope.
Did he say anything like he was gonna use it on you, so to speak?
Nope.
Okay. So were the text messages? I'm sorry. The text messages happened. Was over quite a period of time. It looked like it started around 12:36 a.m. Is that true?
No, these just when they took the pictures. They took the screenshots then. The police took a picture of my phone at that time.
Okay. So what time did those were you texting with Mr. Brown?
This was the day before, so I got off work around 10:30, got home around 11, so somewhere in that time.
Okay.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people will call Jessica Parmalee.
Good afternoon, ma'am. If you come right on up here, right beside this podium here, you're gonna be sworn in, so you'll raise your right hand. This is the microphone that you'll need us talking to, though.
Sir.
You raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Watch your step as you walk up the ramp. And the microphone that's you'll see there is the one you need to speak into. I think your voice is loud enough. A couple of things. We all do it. Nonverbal communication like this. Say yes
Yes,
instead
sir.
of this. And shortcut things like tough to know which inflection. So if you say yes or no, we appreciate it. And
Yes, sir.
it is very common to do, so don't feel bad if I correct you because we need to make sure we're making a record. We need to make sure we got good verbal responses, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Your witness.
Thank you. Can I have you state and spell your first and last name for the record, please?
Jessica Parmalee, JESSICA PARMELEE.
Thank you. Where do you live?
702 Haley on the corner of Haley and Pine.
Right, and is that nearby Grove Street?
Yes.
And this is all in the city of Midland, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you at your house in the evening time of June 15th of 2021?
I was not in my property. I was at my next door neighbor's, which is directly next door, but the driveway is on Haley. So no.
Okay, so you were at your next door neighbor's house?
At 706 Haley, yes, ma'am.
Okay. What were you guys doing? Were you inside, outside?
We were outside planting.
Did you hear something that caught your attention while you were outside?
Yes, ma'am. We heard gunfire.
When you say you heard gunfire, are you familiar with gunshot?
Yes, ma'am.
And you could identify that that's the sound you were hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell where it was coming from?
Sounded like it was coming by Grove Park.
What did you do when you heard that?
We debated for a second calling the police because I wasn't 100% certain if that's what I heard. And then we called the police and reported what we heard.
And do you recall like about what time it was?
It was really close to midnight. I would say between 11:45 and midnight.
Did you see anything else that caught your attention while you were outside?
Yes, ma'am. Shortly after we heard the shots, or what I believe to be shots, I saw a red Charger around the corner from Pine to Haley with no lights on, driving very slowly.
And so you described this vehicle as a red Charger.
Yes,
ma'am. And you said it rounded the corner from Pine onto Haley. Which direction was it going?
it was driving toward my house, so it was, I believe, south.
When it was on, could you tell if it made a left or right hand turn onto Haley?
Left-hand turn.
Okay, so if you were the driver in the car, you'd be a left-hand turn onto Haley
Yes, ma'am.
from Pine Street.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you notice anything about the vehicle is a red Dodge Charger. Did, you said it was driving slow?
Yes, ma'am. On the opposite side of the road.
Okay, so, so driving slow on the opposite side of the road and that struck you as odd?
Yes. Slowed almost to a stop.
Okay, could you tell if anybody was in the vehicle?
I couldn't tell if there was a passenger in the vehicle,
Besides
but
the
somebody was
driver.
driving it. Yes.
Bad question, sorry. Besides the driver, could you tell if there was anybody in the vehicle?
No, ma'am.
And what was stopping you from being able to see in the vehicle?
There were no lights. It was dark. There weren't even headlights on the vehicle.
Okay, so the vehicle had its lights off?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell anything about the windows of the vehicle?
Everything looked dark to me.
Did the vehicle, you said it was driving slow on the opposite side of the road. Did it ever like correct itself?
After it passed the driveway, it seemed to accelerate to a normal pace and move to the correct side of the road.
Did you happen to notice any specific markings on the car? You could just tell from the body style that it was a Charger.
Just from knowing that, to me, it appeared to be a Dodge Charger. I'm not a car guru, but.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Take your honor. Ms. Parmley, what were you doing again?
I was planting aloe plants with my neighbor.
Can you speak up? I'm sorry.
I was planting aloe plants with my neighbor.
Okay, I thought you said planting, okay.
Yes, we were planting.
At midnight, a little
Yes.
before midnight?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
were you in the front yard or the backyard of the
Front yard,
house?
sir.
Front yard of the house? Okay.
Specifically in the driveway.
Is that where you remained throughout the whole incident, so to speak?
We went inside, or my neighbor went inside to retrieve the phone, but I remained in the driveway. Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's when you saw this car?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how long after you heard the shots did you see the car?
I would say within a minute.
Okay. So how many shots did you believe that you heard approximately, if you remember?
I believe it was between 6 and 9.
Okay. And so immediately after you heard the shots, your friend ran into the house to call the police, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you remained outside.
Yes, sir.
Was there a particular reason why you stayed outside?
Because I was occupied.
Okay. With planting or with wondering
With-
what's going on?
I wasn't staying outside to see what was going on. I was more worried about getting everything taken care of. Kind of a shock
Okay.
to me.
Sure.
We don't live in a neighborhood that I would have expected.
Right. So you remained outside and, reasonably or immediately after hearing the shots, you saw the red Charger, as you described it, slowly proceeding down the street. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen that car before?
To my recollection, no, sir.
Okay. And you said the lights were off, the headlights were off, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were the windows like tinted or anything of that nature?
It
that you
was
could tell?
dark. I am not able to determine whether it was
Okay.
tinted or not.
Was which side of the car was towards you? Was it the
The
passenger
passenger
side? Okay. Did you see whether any of the windows were down?
I don't believe any of them were down.
Okay.
To my knowledge, I don't.
But you don't necessarily know for sure.
No, sir.
But you believe that all the windows were up.
Yes, sir.
Well, how long did you see the car? I mean, was it a matter of just a few seconds?
It was just a few moments.
Okay. After it passed your neighbor's house, you said that the car then proceeded at a normal speed after that?
It seemed to accelerate. Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes.
Any objection, Mr. Duke?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. We're all
Thank you,
set.
sir.
Next witness.
People call Sergeant Bess.
Ms. Duso, if I could remind you to push the button.
Sorry. Eric, can I grab the exhibits?
You may. There's best if you come right on up here, stand beside the podium, raise your right hand and be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Your witness.
Can you state your name for the record?
Michael Bess.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a sergeant with the Midland Police Department.
How long have you been working for the Midland Police Department?
Approximately 9.5 years.
And were you working in that capacity on the evening of June 15th of 2021?
Yes.
Were you dispatched to an address on Grove Street in the city of Midland?
Yes.
And that is in Midland County, correct?
Yes.
Were you the first to arrive on the scene that night?
I was.
What did you do when you arrived?
When I arrived, we'd received several calls. Some were for fireworks, some were for shots fired. The closer I got to the address, more calls were coming in for shots fired. I arrived at the original caller's address. There was a couple people out in the road and out of their apartments. I made contact at the original caller and victim's address and made contact with her on the front porch.
All right, and the victim being Katoria Crawford?
Yes.
So when you arrived on the scene throughout your investigation, were you able to determine whether shots were in fact fired?
Yeah, when I knocked on the door and I waited for her to answer, there's a pillar on the left side of her porch, and I noticed gunshot bullet holes through it. At that time, I put over the radio that it was more than likely a legitimate shots fired call.
How many shots did you end up, or holes, I guess, however you identified them, how many of them did you find?
Through the entire investigation, we found 7 gunshots and then the corresponding shell casings.
So you ended up finding 7, I guess, bullet holes, for lack of better
Or
term.
impacts, yes.
Or impacts, okay, so we'll call them 7 impacts and 7 casings.
Yes.
If I showed you a picture of the front of the apartment, would you be able to identify where those impacts were?
Yes.
This is People's Exhibit, Proposed Exhibit 6. Does that look like the front of Mrs. Crawford's apartment?
Yes.
And can you tell by looking at that where the impact marks are?
Yes, there's 2 in the left pillar. Some had hit the brick under the front living room window. There's 1 through the gutter, 1 through the siding above the gutter, and 1 through the master bedroom window. 1 also went through that shovel. We had moved that. That's not where it was originally, but 1 had impacted through the shovel and into the brick as well.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of what you observed as far as where those impacts were in the apartment?
Yes.
Move for admission of People's 6.
Objection or void year?
No, Your Honor.
It is admitted.
So the impact mark, I guess, in the door.
Yes.
Were you able to determine where that bullet went?
Through the front door and into the carpet and then into a little bit of the subfloor.
So that actually made it into the apartment through the door.
Yes.
And did any of the other bullets make it into the apartment as far as you can tell?
Yes. 1 or 2 of them, I believe 2 of them that were aimed through the master bedroom window. There's 1 impact site in the ceiling. I don't recall if there's 2 or not, but it was too deep in there. We weren't able to dig it out at that time.
So one of the bullets at least made it into the bedroom, the upper level bedroom.
Yes.
Were you able to determine what caliber bullet they were?
9mm.
And was there anything else notable about the bullet in terms of what type of bullet it was?
I didn't put much thought into, we just collected the shell casings, I packaged them. I didn't look to see the manufacturer make or anything like that.
Could you tell if it was a regular bullet, hollow point?
Yeah, not from the shell casings, but we did find some fragmented parts of the actual bullet. The ones that were dug out of the floor, as well as ones found in the flower bed that had hit the brick wall. And from that, I was able to tell that they were hollow point rounds.
And you said there were 7 corresponding casings that were located, is that correct?
Yes.
Could you describe where those were located?
Yes, there was one walking from the front door back to the road. There's one found approximately 10 feet or so from the front door along the sidewalk that walked up to the apartment. 4 found at the corner of the sidewalk that goes along the road and then up to the door, and then 2 found in the middle of Grove Street, maybe 40 yards from the front door.
All right, and did you, at some point in your investigation or follow-up, did you take photos of the area and note on those photos where these items were found?
Yes, after the fact, back at the law enforcement center, I was going through the photos that we took, and due to the time of day and it was dark, and it was hard to depict where those items were located. So I got a Google Images photo of the address, and I circled on there to the best of my ability where those items were found. I used the lines on the sidewalk and then some cracks in the street to determine as closely as I could to get an overview for the detectives to follow up in the morning with where those were found.
Would you recognize those diagrams if I showed them to you?
Yes.
Which exhibit is
This
this?
would be People's Proposed Exhibit 7. Does that look like a fair and accurate representation of the diagram you made?
Yes.
I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 7.
Would your objection?
No, Your Honor.
Is admitted.
As we sort of discussed on there, it appears that you circled and then noted with the item numbers as far as where those things were found.
Correct.
And just to be clear, item 1 would be one of the 9mm shell casings that was found.
Yes.
And item 2 would be 4 9mm shell casings.
Yes.
And then item 3 would be the remaining 2 9mm shell casings.
Correct.
So based on your description and that diagram, what did it indicate to you about where these shots were being fired from?
Item number 1 being the closest to the residence, that obviously had to be fired from a relatively close distance, 10 or so feet, for that shell casing to be ejected into the grass right there. And then they moved further away from the residence, going back towards the sidewalk, and then a little bit further away, the ones that were located in the middle of Grove Street.
Is there any way to tell the order of the shots?
No.
Okay, so we can't tell necessarily what order they were taken in, but based on the locations of the casings, it would appear that somebody was in different locations.
Yes.
Either walking up to or away from the apartment.
Yes.
So in your opinion, based on your investigation, these were not all fired from out in the road?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
Cross-examination, Mr. Duke?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Will this witness be excused?
Yes.
Any objection?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant. Next witness?
The people will call Officer DeFrancesco, and I would ask, does the court want to view the exhibits that have been admitted so far?
At some point in time, I'll need to. But if you're going to use them to ask the witnesses, I'll just look at it after that.
I think at this point, I'm pretty much done with these, if it would help you.
Court has received the evidence. Officer, please come on up here, stand by the podium and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Have a seat in witness chair, please.
Maybe state your first and last name and spell your last name for us.
Jacob, and then D Francesco. First is Jacov, last is Defrancesco.
Thank you. What do you do for a living?
I am a police officer.
And that's for the city of Midland?
Yep.
How long have you been doing that?
A little over 3 years.
Were you working in that capacity in the evening of June 15th of 2021?
I was.
And at some point that evening, really toward the end of the evening, almost the early morning of June 16th, were you called out to a Grove Street address to assist with an investigation?
I was.
And when you arrived at that scene, what was your role?
I was originally the first one actually dispatched, but I was the farthest person. I just happened to be the only car on the road at the time. We also at the office, so I was probably the second or third on scene. When I got there, I just saw the shell casings, some shell casings in the street of Grove. So after that, I was just looking for casings. That was my first role.
So you were helping to sort of locate and identify some of the evidence?
Yes.
You had indicated you found shell casings in the road in
Yep.
Grove Street. Did you find anything anywhere else of note?
I found some more shell casings later on the, if you want to call it sidewalk or a driveway of the apartment as you walk up. It's not really a driveway, but it could look like that. I also saw several bullet holes in the one in the apartment door. I saw one on a window, and then on the pillar of the overhang of the apartment.
And then did you locate any of the bullets or just the casings?
I located the, if you want to call kind of a bullet, it'd be a fragment on a brick outside of the apartment. And I also did on the bullet that went through the door and went into the ground. And that was probably our most complete fragment, was the bullet head that was found on the floor.
And that would have been, you said it went through the door, so it would have been in the living room?
It was, yep, right by a couch.
Did it come to your attention at some point that a red Dodge Charger was involved in this incident?
It did.
And had you had some interaction with a red Dodge Charger prior in the evening?
I did.
Could you explain a little bit about that?
So maybe earlier in the night, I'm going to say maybe a half an hour. That might not be the exact time, but about 30 minutes earlier, maybe 40 minutes, so less than an hour. I was dispatched to the ER to pick up somebody that ended up living at 1402 Forney Street. I dropped him off in that address. I did see a red Charger in that driveway at that address. It was tinted. It was a red Charger with tint. Put my flat, and it seemed to be idling. Like it sounded like the engine was running. Tinted, and some music was playing. Maybe it was just a quiet bass, but loud enough where it caught my attention. I've never seen that vehicle there. I'm not saying it doesn't belong there. I've just personally never seen it there in my couple of years. I looked, nobody was inside it from what I could see. I put my flashlight up, but there is heavy tint. And I happened to just run the plate just to see if it belonged there. Then I would have made contact with the RO, registered owner. Just told him to turn off his music, so we didn't get a noise complaint later.
Okay, so you just sort of happened to be at 1402 Forney Street, and while you were there, you encountered this vehicle with loud music playing?
Yep.
And that was the red Dodge Charger?
Yep.
Do you recall the plate?
If I look at my report, I can tell you, I believe the beginning was DUT. I just remember, I don't remember the second half. I can refresh from my report.
Right, would it help you to look at your report to refresh your recollection?
Yep.
You got it, Coach?
You may.
Does that help you to remember the plate?
Yep.
Could you tell us what the full plate was?
It was DUT 9623. And
Did you determine who that vehicle was registered to?
yeah, it was registered to a Mary Riley IMB on Grout Street in Saginaw. I'm not super familiar with Saginaw, so I wouldn't know if that's township or city.
And you had indicated that the windows on that vehicle were tinted?
It was.
Was all of the windows?
I really don't remember. I just remember putting my flashlight up through it and seeing that my flashlight couldn't even go through to see if somebody was sitting in there.
Okay, and when you say up to it, which window were you talking about?
It would have been the driver's side because I was on the left, just making sure the person I dropped in made it through the front door. I just happened to shine my flashlight through.
And in your work, are you familiar with the roads in that general area?
Pretty familiar.
Right, so if I showed you a map that included Forney Street and Grove Street, would you be able to verify the general layout of that area?
Yep.
This would be people's proposed exhibit 8. Does that look like a fair and accurate representation of the area of town that includes Grove and Forney Streets?
It does.
All right, and as you can see, there's a line on that map. Does that indicate a route that could be taken between Grove Street and Forney?
It does. Yep.
I would move for admission of People's Exhibit 8.
Or dear or objection?
No.
It will be admitted.
And on that map, given that route, does that pass by the intersection of Pine and Haley Streets?
It does.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused, Mr. Duso?
Yes.
Any objection, Mr. Duke?
No, Your Honor.
Witness may be excused. Thank you, officer.
People call Detective Bus.
Detective, you come right on up here by the podium. We'll have you sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Put your step around the ramp.
You state your first and last name for the record,
Lucas Huss.
and what do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer with the Midland Police Department, currently assigned to the Detective Bureau.
How long have you been doing that?
With the Midland Police Department, a little over 8 years. Police officer in general, almost 13 years.
And were you working in that capacity on June 16th of 2021?
Yes,
And on that day, did you assist with a search of an apartment at 201 Colony Drive, apartment E in Saginaw?
I did.
Whose apartment was that?
I believe the apartment belonged to a lady named Janae Riley.
And were you aware of the connection between Ms. Riley and Mr. Brown?
Detective Stefaniak had explained to me that they were some sort of a relationship to each other.
So when you went out there, you were part of the sort of team, I guess, that was searching the apartment?
Yes,
And that was pursuant to the search warrant that had been obtained for that apartment?
yes,
During the search, were any guns located in that apartment?
yes.
And could you describe where in the apartment?
Sure. So in the basement of the apartment, there was a washer and dryer that were down there. The guns were located in the dryer, mixed in with some dirty clothes. There were 3 pistols in total.
Would you recognize sort of that area that you just described, the dryer with the guns in it, if I showed you pictures?
Yes.
What exhibit is this?
This is People's Proposed Exhibit 9.
Thank you.
Take a look at that. Does that look like the dryer that you're talking about?
Yes, it does.
And do those guns appear to be the guns that were located in that dryer in that apartment?
They appear to be, yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how that scene looked when those guns were located?
Yes.
I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 9.
Any idea or objection?
No, Your Honor.
The exhibit should be admitted.
So obviously there are 3 guns in that picture. Can you sort of break that down a little bit and describe what those guns were? What type?
Yes. So one of the pistols was a black and colored Taurus handgun. It was a 9mm. One of them was a pink sort of handled. The brand is SCCY, however you pronounce it, Sky. It was also a 9mm pistol. And then there was a Smith & Wesson that was also a black and colored pistol.
And do you know the caliber of the Smith & Wesson?
It was 40.
And were you able to identify, well, I guess, were those guns registered?
So all 3 of the guns were ran through lien. The Smith & Wesson was unregistered at the time, but we did find a purchase permit in the apartment to Janae Riley for that same type, model, serial number for that gun.
Which gun was that? I'm sorry.
The Smith & Wesson, sorry.
Okay.
The Taurus handgun was registered to Janae Riley, and then the SCCY, the gun with the pink handle on it, was reported stolen.
So that black Taurus, the 9mm, do you recognize that if I showed you a picture?
Yes.
This would be People's Proposed Exhibit 10.
Okay.
Take a look at that, and I know it's a little hard to see, but you can see a little bit of the, I believe, the serial number on it. Is that the Taurus 9mm handgun you're referencing that came out of the dryer?
It appears to be, yes. The serial number is just under the open chamber on the slide.
Are you able to read that off that picture?
I believe so.
Right. Go ahead then.
It is ABA 2. That number I can't read. It looks like a 4, but and then 7577.
Thank you. And is that a fair and accurate depiction of that gun that was found in the dryer?
After we had made it safe, yes.
I move for admission of People's Exhibit 10.
Any objection to voir dire?
No, no.
Number 10 will be admitted.
When that gun was located, can you describe how many bullets were in the magazine and or the gun?
I can. So there was one loaded in the chamber when we found it. There were 5 that were in the magazine.
So total 6 bullets in the chamber and the magazine.
Between the two, correct, yes.
How many bullets could the magazine that was in the gun hold?
It was a 12 capacity magazine.
So total plus the one in the chamber, the maximum amount of bullets that gun could hold would be 13?
Correct.
So just going to ask you some basic math. 13 minus 6 equals 7?
That's correct.
Did you locate any ammunition during the search of the apartment?
We did.
Where was that located?
So we seized a total of 4 boxes of ammunition up in the, what I would call the master bedroom. It was located in the closet of the master bedroom.
And was any of that ammunition the same caliber as the shots that were taken at the Grove Street apartment?
So we recovered 9mm shell casings, and yes, the ammunition that was covered was 9mm ammunition.
Would you recognize some of that if I showed you a picture of it?
The ammunition we seized?
Yes.
Yes.
This is going to be People's Proposed Exhibit 11. Looking at that picture, are those some of the boxes of ammunition that you located in the apartment?
They are, yes.
And does that appear to be fair and accurate depiction of those boxes of ammunition?
Yes.
I'd move for admission of People's Exhibit 11.
Would your objection?
No, no.
It will be admitted.
Could you tell us a little more specifically that what's the brand of the ammunition in that picture?
So the box is federal ammunition. It's 9mm Luger plus P rounds.
All right, and what does the plus P mean?
It's a good question.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Could you tell by looking at the box? I mean, were those regular bullets, hollow point?
To remove them, then they would be hollow points.
Okay. And you said that these were found in the bedroom closet?
Correct.
Was there more than one bedroom in the apartment?
There's 2. The one that I refer to as the master bedroom had a full, I don't know if it was a queen or king, but an adult bed in it. The other one looked like it had been set up for a child.
Okay. When you were searching the apartment, did you find any items identifying Mr. Brown as somebody who had been in that apartment?
I believe we found some, you'd have to ask Detective Hanley for sure on that one.
Were you also involved in the search of a vehicle involved in this case?
Yes, I was.
What type of vehicle was that?
It was a red Dodge Charger.
And again, when you searched that Charger, were you able to find any documentation or indication that Mr. Brown had been in or used that vehicle?
We did find mail in the vehicle, both for Janae Riley and Mr. Brown.
It's just as one quick follow-up, the items that we're talking about, the items that you located during your search, what did you do with them?
They were made safe and then they were collected as evidence.
And were they brought back to the law enforcement center?
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Honor. Detective Huss, was there any fingerprints taken off the 9mm Taurus handgun?
No.
Was it examined for fingerprints?
It has been submitted to the lab for examination, but we don't have any sort of results yet.
So we're early in the process is what you're telling me?
For the examination of the gun?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was there any ballistics done on the the bullet fragments that were found at the scene of the crime?
We do not have any comparison back yet.
Okay.
At this time.
Is that something that's happening?
So that gun was submitted to the lab for analysis, yes, to compare it to the rounds that were, or the shells that were recovered on scene.
Okay. Now, I caught the part about when you searched the red Charger that you found Mr. Brown's mail in the Charger. Is that true?
Yeah, I believe there was mail in there with his name on it.
Okay. And I missed the part when you're testifying about Janae Riley's apartment. What evidence did you find that Mr. Brown, whether he lived there or had been there?
So I don't necessarily recall myself taking any paperwork with his name on it.
Okay. I have another question. So.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Detective, you may be excused. Next witness.
Yes, just leave him here.
Thank you.
Yep.
People will call Detective Hanley.
I'm sorry, Detective.
Hanley, Sean Hanley.
All right. Detective, come on up here, please, right between the podium and front desk here. Sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Watch your step around this. Yeah, please.
Can you state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Sean Hanley, Seanhanley.
Thank you. And what do you do for a living?
Police officer.
How long have you been doing that?
7 years.
Were you working in that capacity on, I guess we'll go with a date and range here, June 16th, 17th, and 18th?
Yes.
And on the 16th, did you assist with the execution of a search warrant at 201 Colony in Saginaw?
Yes.
What was your role in that?
Photographs. Taking photographs.
And did you find anything while you were photographing the things in the apartment indicating that Mr. Brown had either been there or lived there?
I don't remember. I took photographs of his driver's license, but I don't think that was in the apartment.
Okay. Were you involved in listening to some of the jail phone calls made by Mr. Brown after he was placed in the Midland County Jail?
Yes.
And what, do you recall when those calls were from?
Date range?
Yes.
I believe it was the 17th of June and the 21st or 22nd of June of this year.
So I'm going to start with the ones on June 17th. Did you listen to a call between Mr. Brown and someone named Whitney?
Yes.
And could you tell me what Mr. Brown was talking about in that phone call?
He was asking her to either text or call someone that he named as Junior and wanted this person to go to the apartment that he was arrested at and get his clean clothes out of the dryer.
Right, and did he indicate how much importance that was to him?
Yes.
What did he say?
That was in the second phone call, but he emphasized that he really needed clean clothes and they were worth a lot of money to him.
And again, those were clothes that he indicated were in the dryer of the apartment that he was arrested at?
Yes.
And could you tell us what apartment that was?
201 South Colony apartment
So that was the apartment that you were involved in
Yes.
the execution of the search warrant at?
Yes.
Did you also listen to calls between Mr. Brown and Katoria Crawford?
Yes.
When were those calls from?
Those were the 17th, I believe, as well. Those were later in at the nighttime around 10:30 p.m.
And what was Tremaine saying to Katoria in those calls?
He started off with saying that he hoped she was happy with where he was, saying things to the effect of "Don't come to court." Asked her to name a price of making this go away.
And so when he asked her to name a price, was that an offer of money, essentially?
That would be my assumption. Yes.
How many calls did he make to Ms. Crawford?
From what I saw, he dialed her number at least 10 times and spoke to her 2 times.
And, so that the content that we were just discussing, was that in the first time that they spoke?
Yes.
And what was the second time they spoke? What was he talking about?
I'm also drawing a blank right now, but it was still more to the effect of Tremaine telling her not to come to court.
Would it help? Are you having trouble recalling without your report?
Yes.
Would it help if you could view your report to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
I have mine.
You have a
Yes.
if you want to go ahead and take a look at that, then see if that helps to refresh your recollection regarding those calls. Did that help?
Yes.
All right. So as to that second phone call, could you tell us a little bit more detail, if you recall now, what they were talking about?
So Katoria was asking Tremaine why he did this, and Tremaine stated that they're on a jail phone. He's not going to say anything based on being on a jail phone. He doesn't know what she's talking about.
Did you then further listen to a call between Mr. Brown and someone where Mr. Brown was instructing that person to contact Ms. Crawford?
Yes.
Do you recall the date of that phone call?
That was on the 22nd of June, I believe. 22nd.
So it was a few days later.
Yes.
And do you recall what he was telling that person? First of all, were you able to tell by listening to the call who he was talking to?
I don't know. They didn't mention names. It sounded to me that he was talking to a male.
Okay. And what was he telling the male?
He was telling the male to take down this number, and actually gave the male Katoria's phone number, and in nicer words told this male to text Katoria and tell her not to come to court.
Did he indicate to that person what he thought was going to happen if she came to court?
Yes.
What was that?
That he would do I don't remember the exact quote, but he would do 6 years.
You're referring to presumably prison time?
Prison, yes.
And did he also identify her as the person who called the police on him?
Yes. He didn't say her name, but obviously knowing her phone number, he's told the male that this is the lady who called the police on him.
And did he indicate whether he was aware that he was able to contact Katoria or not at that point?
He told the male he can't call her. He thinks her number is blocked.
I have no further questions at this point.
Cross-examination?
I have no question, Henry.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No.
All right, thank you. Next witness.
The people will call Detective Stefaniak.
Detective, you come on up, be sworn in, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you state and spell your name for the record?
It's Mark, M-A-R-K, Stefaniak, S-T-E-F-A-N-I-A-K.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a police officer with the Midland City Police Department.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been a police officer in Midland City for approximately 11 years. I was with the sheriff's office for 4 years before that, so a total of 15 years law enforcement.
And were you working in that capacity on June 16th of 2021?
Yes, I was. I was a detective at that time.
And did you get involved in this case? I think it was at the point where the search warrants were being sought.
Yes, ma'am.
And where were you seeking a search warrant for initially?
So the incident happened on June 15th, as you just stated. I estimated between approximately 2350 to 2358 hours. I came into work in the investigations division as a detective the following morning, being June 16th. Approximately 8 a.m. I was made aware of the incident. That incident was assigned to me via our lieutenant. At that time, I started to gather information from the reports that were done at that moment from Officer DeFrancisco as well as Sergeant Bess. Started looking the possibility of executing or getting search warrants for vehicles as well as residents that we believe the suspect to be located at.
All right, and were you able to identify a location that you thought the suspect was at?
Yes, I was. Information that I obtained was that at the time, Ms. Crawford identified the suspect as Mr. Tremaine Brown, as well as the information that Officer DeFrancisco provided with him living at 1402 Forney Street. Gathered some more information, as well as it's important to know that a lien message was sent out to the areas surrounding at that time a little bit after midnight. I believe it's 12:38. Midland County Central Dispatch put out a lien notification to surrounding agencies requesting BOL for the red Dodge Charger 2009 that we believe the suspect to be in.
Right, and was that vehicle located somewhere?
The vehicle was eventually located. We're fortunate to have several former Saginaw City officers working for us, and some calls were made. I know to several officers, and at pretty much simultaneously that night, Saginaw County Central Dispatch informed us that on, I believe it was June 2nd, a female named Janae Riley was stopped in that 2009 red Dodge Charger that with the plate that Officer DeFrancisco provided. She was cited. Again, continuing, her address was provided on her Michigan driver's license, as well as a correlation between Janae and Mr. Tremaine Brown.
And what was the correlation between the two?
They had actually had previous contacts with law enforcement. There was 2 Saginaw City reports that I was able to quickly locate and identify related to domestic violence at Covenant Healthcare. Several other incidences in the Saginaw City report writing system that linked the two being in what we believe to be a dating relationship.
And, were you able to figure out, did they have any children in common?
I did not know at that time. It was, again, some information with them being at Covenant. It was light information that they had a daughter in common at that time.
And through the rest of your investigation, were you able to confirm that?
Yes.
Circling back then, you got an address for Janae Riley. Is that true?
That's correct.
What was that address?
201 South Colony, apartment E.
Right, and that's in Saginaw?
Yes.
Were you able to locate the red Dodge Charger in question?
When I came in, it was just before I started at 8 a.m. Officer Jeremy Sove was able to get information from us, again, working simultaneously with Saginaw City as well as Saginaw Township. Officer Sove works for Saginaw Township. He went to South Colony and located our 2009 Dodge Charger that we believe was the suspect vehicle.
Right on. So you, at that point, then you had located the red Charger outside of the apartment where Mr. Brown's I guess I'll call her, his child's mother lived.
Yes, it was actually marked at that time with apartment E on it. They had pulled in the parking spot of apartment E.
Okay, so that vehicle is in the specific parking spot assigned to Ms. Riley's apartment.
That's my understanding, yes.
Was there ever a connection made? I believe Officer DeFrancesco testified that the vehicle was registered to a Mary Riley. Was there a connection made between Mary Riley and Janae Riley?
Yes, Janae Riley is Mary Riley's daughter.
So based upon that information, were you seeking a search warrant then for, what were you seeking search warrants for?
At that time, I knew I definitely wanted to obtain a search warrant for the vehicle, having that be our suspect vehicle, which I felt was more than enough probable cause. I then filled out a search warrant for that apartment, believing that the suspect was in there, as well as the owner or driver of that vehicle. So I completed a search warrant for both the 201 South Colony Drive, apartment E, as well as on the same search warrant for the 2009 red Dodge Charger.
And were you then part of the team that that executed that warrant?
Yes, that warrant was signed, or that warrant was reviewed by Assistant Prosecutor Dusso, yourself, as well as Prosecutor J.D. Brooks, subsequently signed by Magistrate Ladwig. Once that was done, I had actually already made some calls, and we're having the Saginaw ES team, Emergency Services team, start to more or less assemble and prepare themselves for the execution of the search warrant.
And so you had some, sounds like then Saginaw's team was helping you basically execute these warrants, make sure that nothing happened at the apartment prior to your arrival.
Correct.
Were you aware, or were you made aware of who was at that apartment at that time?
We did not know who was at that. So I guess, are you talking before or right before we actually executed the search warrant, ma'am?
At any point in time, so you said Saginaw's team went out there, correct?
Yeah.
Were they able to figure out who was in the apartment, or did that come later?
At approximately 1300 hours on the 16th, we started a briefing with the Saginaw ES team for giving them the information related to our case, to have them hit the door for the execution of the search warrant. Right before that happened, it was honestly roughly 2 minutes before we started that briefing, Janae Riley walked outside to Officer Sove, who we had already had watching the apartment, and stated that her car was stolen, which in fact it wasn't. We had already impounded the vehicle to Best Towing. So she wanted to make a report that her vehicle was stolen. She came out of apartment B, and we had made contact with the owner now, Janae Riley.
All right, and you had indicated that at that point, her vehicle, or I guess her mother's vehicle that she used, was in fact not in the parking lot, but it wasn't stolen. It was because it had been impounded pursuant to the search warrant.
Yes, before we arrived at the search warrant, we had that vehicle impounded.
So Ms. Riley came out of the apartment. Did she interact with anybody?
She interacted with Officer Sove of Saginaw Township Police Department.
How did that go?
It did not go well. She became volatile and eventually was arrested and charged.
I guess prior, or maybe not prior to her arrest, were you able to speak with her?
I was.
Were you able to obtain any of her property that you later used in your investigation?
Yes.
What was that?
She had a gold iPhone, Apple iPhone SE. During my questioning her upon the conclusion, I asked her if that was her phone, and she confirmed that it was. And I eventually seized that from her upon the conclusion of my interview.
And just to be clear, she did confirm with you that that was her phone.
Yes, she did.
So did you actually, I guess, participate, for lack of a better word, did you actually go in the apartment to participate in the search of the apartment, or were you doing things outside?
I did go into the apartment. Everything was done when I was there. My interview with her took approximately an hour.
Okay, so you were, while the while the search and seizure of the items was going on inside, you were outside talking with Ms. Riley?
Yes.
Did you ever come into contact with Mr. Brown that day?
Yes, ma'am.
What were the circumstances of that?
I finished my concluded my interview with Miss Riley, obtained the information that I was looking for from her, went over to the other police officer's vehicle where Mr. Brown was at that time, and Mirandized him.
Did you obtain any of his property that was then later used in your investigation?
Yes, he stated they did not want to speak to me in regards to this incident, and when he was taken into custody, he had several items of personal property on him. One of those items being a black Apple iPhone 8.
And that phone was something then that you seized from him at that point. Did he confirm that that was his phone?
He did confirm that it was his phone, and yes, I did seize that.
And were you able to, either through his personal belongings or by his confirmation, just confirm his identity at that point?
He would not give any information, including his identity. He wouldn't say anything in regards to identifiable information. But he was found with several work identifications naming himself Tremaine Brown. He was found with a wallet as well as credit cards. He was found with everything that stated his name was Tremaine Brown, other than him verbalizing it was him.
And do you see that person that you identified as Tremaine Brown in court today?
Yes.
Could you point him out and describe what he's wearing?
Sitting next to Mr. Duke, and he's wearing oranges.
Record reflect the identification of the defendant.
Any objection or void dear?
No, Your Honor.
Record reflect the identification of the defendant.
So I want to go back to the vehicle just for a second. Were you also involved in the search of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think we've heard some testimony that there was some paperwork with Mr. Brown's name on it in that vehicle. Is that true?
That is true, yes.
Were you able to confirm that that was a vehicle that was driven by Mr. Brown at some point in time?
Yes.
How did you confirm that?
In the vehicle on the driver's side specifically, if I recall, I'm fairly confident that there was mail, specifically if I remember correctly, from the court in Saginaw. It was the DOC that had Tremaine Brown's on the floorboard. We did take a picture of that, and then in the door was more again certified mail, and this one was to Janae Riley. Both being on the driver's side, I do remember that.
So at some point, did you do some comparison of some of the items that were found in the Colony apartment to some of the items found at the scene on Grove Street?
Yes, I did.
What were you comparing?
The specific comparison that I did, being familiar with firearms, having been the former Midland Police Department range master, I knew that some of the casings could be identifiable if you look, if you knew what you were looking for specifically. So I actually did some comparison with the ammunition that was located inside the apartment on 201 Colony Apartment E, as well as the spent casings that were located outside the victim's address the night of the incident.
I do. Just checking, Ms. Duso, because I do have to summarize it. Should we grab some time tomorrow to finish the preliminary examination?
This is my last witness, so.
Well, I don't know how long you need to go with your last witness.
I think we can try to get done today if you're willing to go until 5, but.
No, it's five is fine. I just don't know how long you're planning on going.
I think we could do it today.
Okay, well, let's continue then.
All right, so this is People's Exhibit 11, and that's that federal 9mm ammunition that was seized from the Colony apartment.
Ms. Duso, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Surprising, I'm standing right over the microphone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Katrina? All right.
So this is People's Exhibit 11. Is this the federal ammunition, 9mm ammunition that was seized from the Colony apartment?
Yes.
Right, and was that some of the ammunition that you were comparing in all of this?
Yes.
What specific about that ammunition that you were able to identify that by?
So the specifics that you can visually see with this ammunition is that it is a federal ammunition and it's labeled FC 9mm plus P. So what that tells me is that FC is what federal ammunition will stamp the casings. And we're talking about casings in this specifically to identify their casing ammunition. The 9mm obviously states the size of the bullet and stamped specifically on the casing, and the plus P means overpressurized. So that is what that casing specifically is stamped via the company. And again, that actually casing itself matched the ammunition located inside the apartment. And those casings, those casing matched the recovered casings that were located outside of the victim's apartment. There's one more thing that is uncommon, and that was that they actually had a blue mark on the primers themselves. You don't see that very common, and all of the ammunition casings matched that specifically.
All right, so those the casings on those bullets had the same markings as the casings that were found at the Grove Street scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Did those also match what was left in the Taurus 9mm that was located in the Colony apartment?
Yes.
So all three of those things were consistent?
Yes. May I add one more thing, ma'am?
Sure.
The bullet themselves, actually, I recall being a serrated hollow point, which again is very specific. So the actual bullet itself on those with that ammunition was serrated hollow points. Again, recovered, I believe it's item number 4 that we recovered at the scene. That was the casing that you'd asked the other detectives about that went through the door.
Okay, so we're referring to the bullet that I think was pulled out of the floor in the living room?
Yes, ma'am.
So that actual bullet, not just the casing, would match the type of bullets that are in the federal ammunition.
So when it goes through a door, there's going to be damage and such, but I could actually see the serrations which match the unfired rounds.
So I want to ask you about these phones that we were talking about earlier. The phone belonging to Mr. Brown, did you do any further analysis of that?
I did.
And what do you have some training in analyzing cell phone data?
So I'm currently I just was promoted to the full-time detective position in the end of March. I had done this before, but went and did several other things during that time. I then became at that time a member of the 3rd District ICAC team, which is the Internet Computer Crimes team. So I started to do my training in that. This goes with my training. We at that Detective Huss had taken both phones down and did a gray key and had the Michigan State Police utilize a tool that we utilized for downloading phones. That extraction was brought to myself, and I used the Celebrate Physical Analyzer and viewed the information that we were able to parse from that phone.
All right, so I want to talk about Mr. Brown's phone first. Could you just describe that phone for us again real quick?
That phone was a Apple iPhone 8 model A1863. It had a black in color with SIM card, cracked screen, and edges.
All right, and were you able to get any data about the location of that phone during the time of the shooting?
Yes, his location data was in initial view is not as specific as some I have seen. But I can definitely tell that his location services put him in the area of the apartment at the time of the incident.
All right, and when we're saying in the area, like, could you give us an idea of what kind of area that is?
I don't have those numbers specifically in front of me, right?
Are we talking like within the city of Midland, within a couple blocks?
Within a couple blocks.
Okay. Did you also locate anything of note in his search history?
I did. There was approximately 80 searches that were done during a very specific period of time, and I categorized and made note of approximately 10 of them.
All right, and what period of time are we referring to?
I made note in my report, and on 6/16, which is the night following the incident at 12:55 a.m., so approximately 1 hour after the incident was reported. That was when the first search was made, and then on 6/16/2021 at approximately 1:04, so approximately 10 minutes later, that was when the last incident that I actually recorded was made. There were, like I stated, there are approximately 80 searches on that phone from roughly the time of the incident to the time that he was taken into custody by Saginaw Township that are pertinent to this. But I had only highlighted approximately 10.
All right, so if you could, can you give us some examples of the things that he was searching in that time immediately after the shooting? It looks like, I think you said about 12:55 a.m. to about 1:04 a.m. on June 16th.
Yes, is it all right if I actually just read the 10 with timestamps?
I assume you're not able to recall all that by memory?
Correct.
All right, so would it help to refresh your recollection if you looked at your report?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I would ask you to go ahead and do that then.
Thank you. June 16th, 2021, 12:55 a.m. How long does it take for the police to call off a sweep? Done on google.com. June 16th, 2021, 12:55.21 a.m. How long does it take for the police to call off a search of someone? Google.com. June 16th, 2021, 12:58 a.m. How long does police look for suspect? Google.com. June 16th, 2021, 12:59 a.m. How long do the police have to arrest someone? Google.com. June 16th, 2021, 1:03 a.m. Unlawful discharge of a firearm. Google.com. June 16th, 2021, 1:04 a.m. Unlawful discharge of a firearm years. Google.com.
All right, thank you. Did you also obtain some information from Ms. Riley's phone?
Yes, I did.
And was that using sort of the same process that you described for Mr. Brown's phone?
Yes, it was.
What was there communication between the two on the night of on June 15th?
Yes, there was. There was both text messages and calls made.
Could you describe in a little more detail when those texts or calls were being made?
The text messages was happening on June 15th, 2021 at 11:34 p.m.
And what was the content of that?
Again, if I can read direct, it's about 5 lines.
Sure.
You ain't trying to help me. I'm just going to have to myself. That was from Tremaine's phone. WTF is up. That is from Janae's phone. Put her playpen up. That is from Janae's phone. Aight. That is from Tremaine's phone. And here. That is from Jermaine's phone. And that last one was sent 6:15:21 at 11:34 p.m.
I'm sorry. Who was the last text? The one that said here?
Janae.
Okay, so that was a text from Janae to Tremaine.
Yes.
Do you recall any of the text messages that were sent just prior to those?
I do not. I did provide them. I know.
I think we're on Exhibit 12. So People's Proposed Exhibit 12. Take a look at that. Does that look like some of the information, specifically text messages that were obtained from Ms. Riley's phone?
Yes.
And are you able to, by looking at the phone numbers on that exhibit, tell who those messages were being sent back and forth between?
Yes, I can.
Could you just identify who those people would be?
Tremaine Brown and Janae Riley.
Those look like fair and accurate depictions of the text that you got off the phone?
Yes.
I'd ask for admission of people's exhibit 12.
Any board your objection?
No, Your Honor.
They'll be admitted.
If you could just look prior to those texts that you just indicated, was there any talk about basically what Mr. Brown's business was?
So there's two, so it says you home right. That is on 6/15/21 at approximately 3:50 p.m. The following is yes, which was the response, and that's at 3:50. The next message is, all right, I'm on my way. That's at approximately 3:51. And on 6/15/21 at approximately at 9:54, Mr. Brown says, "Now I'm about handling my business." Ms. Riley responds at 10:07. I'm sorry, it was delivered at 10:05. It was read at 10:07. Just beat her ass like you do me. There's no message on that following one. And then he responds Mr. Brown responds, and I can see through the messages, it's at 10:07. He put NAW for nah, and he put this is different immediately following. She put, I'm at Sus House at 10:08. And at 10:10, Mr. Brown put, you ain't trying to help, I'm just have to by myself.
Okay, and that's where we pick up with those messages that you had already indicated.
Yes.
Okay. So those were all messages being sent, I think you'd indicated around 10 p.m. on June 15th, just prior to the shooting.
Yes.
And no further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Duke?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Stefaniak, if I understand the timeline, the red Charger was located at the South Colony address in Saginaw, is that correct, by law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
And then you had approximately that time, you had obtained search warrants from Midland County, is that correct?
The Charger was found, if I recall, it was found approximately a little after 7 in the morning. I believe it was like 7:30. And then I obtained search warrants for both the residence and the vehicle. I think it was approximately 12 o'clock noon that I actually completed everything.
Okay. And the red Charger was seized or impounded before the execution of the search warrant at South Colony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that was the reason why Ms. Riley apparently was upset with the law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was a search warrant ever executed on 1402 Forney?
No, it was not.
Okay, is there any reason why there wasn't or could have been? I mean, do you have any information that Mr. Brown was living at 1402 Forney?
We had previous contacts with Mr. Brown at 1402 Forney, yes.
Okay, so you didn't believe that there was anything of evidentiary value located at that residence?
No, sir.
Okay. And your prior testimony was you seized both Janae Riley's phone and Tremaine Brown's phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And they were both forensically analyzed?
Yes, sir.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Any objection?
I have no objection, Your
All
Honor.
right, next witness?
Your Honor, at this point, the people addressed.
All right. Mr. Duke, you planning on putting a case on?
No, Your Honor.
We're going to be adjourned today. We will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 to finish the arguments and my review of the documentation. There's too many charges and too serious of charges for me to rush through this too quickly. And I'd like an opportunity to take a look at the exhibits.
Would the court like them overnight?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. We'll be adjourned on this case at this time until 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, would you like Mr. Brown brought over or would you like him via Zoom?
Nope, I'd like him brought over, please.